All right, so this is Eli again, and I've got my body braided here. This is for a 5/8 bosal, and we're doing a swelled nose. I haven't talked about how to build this up at this point, but I can cover it in another video later on down the road. Basically what I did is I covered my leather foundation here with one single layer of white florist tape, and then you can see here I've drawn some lines on there, and this one kind of got crooked, but basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to draw a straight line from one end to the other that goes right down the middle, and we'll use that whenever straightening up our nose button after we get it braided on a little bit. So the first things that we need to do, I've got my strings tempered up here. This is going to be an 8-strand multiple string button. So gotta get all these sorted out. So what I do is I split these in half. So I just find the middle, and then I come off middle about 6 inches or so. And then once I find that, I keep these aligned in my fingers just like this. So I got lucky. All of those are hair side up right now. But if they're not all hair side up, get them that way. And then I hang the short end off the back of my hand, like so. All right, so now what we're going to do is crown this essentially. So we're going to take the one that's furthest on the right. We're going to come over one, under one, over one, under one, over one, under one, over one, under one. And first things first, let me make sure I've got 8 strings and not more than that. There's 9 strings in here. So we need to get rid of one. I see one right here that's got kind of a bad spot on it, so we're just going to drop that string off the side here. So now we've got 8 strings. So now, sorry, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to go over one, under one, and keep all these in line. This does matter. It's not just over and under any random strings. So you follow it in line. So there, we've got it over one, under one, over one, under one, over one, under one, over one. And then I hold this one down over here with between these 2 fingers. So then we go to the next one in line and we do the exact same thing. So we go over one, under one, over one, under one, over one, under one. And then I just hold that right next to that one again. And I kind of tighten that down. Make sure all this is hair side up still. And then next in line. So you just keep doing that. So once again, over one, under one, over one, under one, over one. And then you just keep working your way down the line. Over one, under one, over one, under one. And what you'll notice here is we're creating an over one, under one pattern that we're going to continue once we get this cast on to our nose button foundation. So then this is over one, under one, over one. Over one, under one. And then just over one. So now that we've got all those, you don't do anything with this last string. This one just hangs out. So I come in here with my left hand. I put this last string on the back side and I grab all of these and I keep them in alignment. And then I do kind of the same thing. So this first string that's all the way on the right comes back like so. And then I stick my hands under here. And now we have the job of trying to kind of work this all down and get our crown cast on to our foundation. So one thing that I didn't do here is change around my little vise. So we'll do that real quick, and then I've got a little piece of leather here to protect this. So what I do is I lock my bosal into the vise here. And I don't pinch down super hard on it, you know, I just need it to kind of stay where it's at. All right, now come back here. So the long side of my strings is going to be hanging off the right hand side, and I cast this on. So I make sure that I get my my strings over my foundation, and then I'm going to come from the left. I'm going to pass that highest string around. I'm going to go over this one, and then under one, over one, under one, over one, under one, over one, and then under this last one. And so the way that I was taught how to do this, so I'm going to pull this down just a little bit. But the way that I was taught to do this was to take this one and then we're going to go from the left again. So we're going to take the highest string on the left. Now we're going to come under one. So we're going twice from the left. So we're going under one now instead of over first. Then over, under, over, under, over, excuse me, under, and then over this last one. So now that we've got all of this cast on here, you got to kind of work these strings down and make sure they all stay facing the proper way. But I just pull these down and kind of get them cast over the top of this. Kind of get this worked down as best as I can. And as you go, they'll tighten down around this ring knot on the end here. Okay, now we're going to take our highest string from the right, and that's going to come and do the same thing we just did. So now our pattern is always going to start under first. So it's under one, over one, under one, over one, under one, over one, under one, and then over one again. So this is all just an over one, under one pattern. It's going to stay like that all the way down until we get to the very end. And so we're going to go ahead and shut off the video because we don't need to sit here and just keep saying over one, under one the entire time that I do this. That's a lot redundant. So we'll go ahead and shut this off. But one of the things that I want to say that I'm doing here is now I'm starting to form all my boxes, which is really important. So we'll pause the video and then we'll come back in a few minutes and I'll just kind of explain what these boxes are and what they're doing. But for now, we're just going to keep alternating left and right and then doing our over one, under one pattern, starting under every time that we pass the string around. So we'll be back in a few minutes and we'll talk a little bit more about these boxes that I was just mentioning and how they're coming into play here. So what we're doing here is if you look at the actual braid that's already on the foundation here, you can kind of see that we're creating squares of space essentially. So what we do here is I pass it, then I come back, and I know I was told by my videographer here, i.e. my girlfriend, that my hair is getting in the way every time I bend down to look at this, but I have to see what I'm doing on this opposite side. So just kind of bear with me and listen to what I'm saying while I'm on that side, and then hopefully you can see it on this right side. So I'm not holding on to everything because the more I grip on all this stuff, the more it moves it around. And I'm trying really hard to make boxes. So these boxes are supposed to be a string wide, basically, because as we run everything back through, if it's a perfect string wide, it'll fill in really nicely. So since this is the smallest area of my foundation, since it's swelled, that's where it needs to be like that. Once I get into the actual swelled portion of it, it'll probably gap out a little bit, and that's totally fine. But what I do is I come here, I find my high string around, and then I'm going to have to put my head kind of down here. And then I pass it. And so all I have is my thumb up here on top of the braid holding down the last braid that we threw, or like the last string that we laid down. So I do it like this, pass it here, move my thumb, keep that one held down, then what I do is I come back here and I readjust all my boxes essentially. So I move everything around kind of with my fingers, or if I need to with my awl, and make my boxes all as squared up as I possibly can. I know I'm probably in the way there. So that's the way that I manage these boxes as best I can. No matter how good you do with that, you're still going to need to move some things around whenever you get everything braided, and we'll cover that whenever we get to that point. But for now, I just kind of wanted to explain how I manage all the strings with my fingers and how I try not to touch all the pieces that have already been laid down, because that's already completed, and the more I mess with it, the more I move things around, and I'm going to have to fix them later on. And I want to fix as little as possible, so trying to do it as right as I can the first time. And it's a lot of strings to manage, but it's not bad. This is the same, by the way, I do need to state this. This is the exact same way of doing this as if you were using 4 strings, 6 strings. It doesn't matter. This is all going to be the exact same, the way you do all of this stuff. So as far as the crowning it and casting it on, I still go 2 from the left around the top of the foundation and start going alternating after that. So that it's the exact same. So if you were using 4 strands, 6 strands, 8 strands, 12 strands, it literally doesn't matter. The whole process and the reasoning behind it is exactly the same. Same thing with the size of boxes that we're making here. They're always going to be the width of the string, basically. And so just pay attention to what size string you're using, because that's going to tell you what size your box needs to be in the smallest portion of your nose button. In which this one being a swelled nose, like this one is a little bit different than what you're probably going to do, or definitely different than what you're going to do on a regular straight nose, but it's still good to talk about it, you know. And you'll get to see the little slight variations here on this swelled nose button. Straight nose button is going to be a lot easier to braid or over a straight foundation, because this isn't just used for nose buttons. You know, you can use this on like a quirt handle. You can use this in a lot of different places, but for now, since we are doing a nose button, I'm just referring to it as braiding my nose button. All right, so we're just going to keep braiding all the way down. We're going to get all the way to the very end, and then we'll come back after that and talk about what to do next. Okay, so what I've done is I've braided all the way down, and you can kind of see that my boxes are fairly boxy, so I don't want elongated rectangles. I want everything to be like a perfect square, and they're not, you know, and that's okay. This is the step where we're going to go back and fix that. But what I did here is I braided about 1 inch past my heel, or past the end of my foundation. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop what I have here, and then I'm just going to take some wax thread, and we're going to just tie this off. So I'm going to tie it as close to the end of the strings as I can get, because I'm going to need to be able to play with some of this stuff down here. So take that, and I just wrap it around about twice, and then I'm just going to throw a quick square knot in here. Fairly tight though. Okay, there we go. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to need you to come back here so you can look down this. You're going to have to come all the way back here. So if you look down this, you can kind of see how it's curving off to the left, especially once you get down in here. You can see like my V's are pretty well straight all the way up to about this point, and they kind of curve off to the left. And so what we're going to do here is I'm just going to take this out of the vise, and I'm actually going to soap this up at this point, because this has kind of gotten a little bit dry on me, and in order to move these around well, I need them to have a little bit of moisture in them. And I actually like them kind of more on the wet side, than I like them on the dry side. I like being on the dry side for braiding like my for doing this part, but then I just need a little bit more moisture in them so I can move my crosses around and get everything all lined up. And then what we're going to do as well is you can see these, let me get in the light a little bit better. So you can see these black lines that delineate the quarters basically. So there's a quarter here, quarter there, quarter there, quarter there. It's real hard to see, but we're going to use these to make sure that I have the same amount of boxes from here to the end as I do on this side. And that's going to be important because that's going to help keep everything centered. And I'm going to add some color onto this one where it's swelled up. And if I have more boxes on one side than the other side, then it'll cause that coloration to get off centered. So that's why we drew those on the foundation in the first place. And so we're going to take this and we're just going to soap it up real quick. And I'm going to let this sit a little while. And then we'll come back and start moving these boxes around. And whenever I start moving the boxes around, I'll bring y'all along with me because I'll show you how I do it and how I manage it. And it, like I said, there may be a better way of doing this, but this is the way that I've done it since starting, and it's tended to work fairly well for me. It might be a little bit time consuming, but that's fine. So I'm trying not to be overly liberal with the amount of soap I put on here. I just need a little bit of moisture in it. But I'm just going to take this and then I take a sack, we've got some garbage bags for recycling that will wrap this around the nose button with and let these strings kind of absorb this moisture. I say not a ton, and here I am just putting a ton of soap on this. It's okay though. Alright, so now that I've got about that much soap on this, I'm going to take this and wrap it up in a sack. So just pause it real quick. Okay, so now I'm just going to take all of these strings here. I don't want to add any more moisture to these because I want them kind of drier. So what I do is I just fold them along the nose button like this. Try not to kink them up too much. But I just do like that. And I take this, which is just a trash bag. I think this is like a tall kitchen trash bag or something like that. I generally fold it in half, like so. And I just take my nose button, kind of center it in here. It helps if you have a second person because they can lend a hand and make this go a little bit easier. And I'm just grabbing that. Yeah, perfect. So if you can have somebody help you do exactly what Kelsey's helping me do right now, that's perfect. So I just wrap it up fairly tight, and then I'll put rubber bands on either end of it, and I'll just leave it in here and probably for about an hour or so, and then we'll come back to it and kind of explain the rest of it. So thanks. Okay, so I just took this out of the bag. It's been sitting in there for probably 20 something minutes or so, not very long, but long enough for these to absorb enough moisture to where I can start moving these crosses around. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look up here at the bites, and you can tell these are really elongated bites over here, and these are really close together. So I'm just going to stick my fit in there and kind of push those bites around and get those more evenly spaced around the top here, and that'll help as they're coming out. They should be in a better position. I just dig my fit in and just kind of push all these around until they look fairly evenly spaced. So those are kind of close. Anyways, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take all the slack out of that one that I just pulled down because it had a lot of slack in it. And I don't want it to be super slacked and then kind of look different than all the other ones. So I'm just tracing it all the way to the end here. Like these little things, you know, they could be easily overlooked and you could do without them, but taking the time to pay attention to these small details really does make a difference in your finished work. So although they're tedious and time consuming, it can be worth it. So don't skip it, you know, just spend the extra time, put in the extra effort, and your braiding will really look extremely good at the end. So don't skip steps. All right, so now that I got my bites fairly evenly spaced, I'm just going to come around here and just make, I'm focusing on all the boxes that are, or all the strings that are coming this direction from my right to the left. And I'm just going to kind of move those around as needed right now. And I'm basically just trying to open up these boxes. And I don't want rectangles, I want boxes. I want perfect squares basically. So I'm just going to trace these around and move around as much as I need to and try to get these all into the shape of little perfect boxes that are about a string wide, especially in this area right here, because this is the thinnest that my nose button foundation is. So that's where it really needs to be one string wide. Elsewhere it can be a little bit bigger, and that'll be okay because it's going to get filled in with colored strings. So that's not too big of a deal, but just run through here, kind of straighten all these up and get your boxes. Just pay attention to the boxes. Don't pay attention to anything else at this point. And as you pay attention to your boxes and as you move these around and create these perfect squares, once you look down your braiding later on, you'll notice that everything is lining up fairly well. So don't skip ahead, you know, just do the bare bones basic stuff right in the beginning. And as you do, everything will come together. I got a sleepy camera lady. She's yawning on camera, if you hear that. I don't know why, it's only like 8 something. So, like I said, all I'm doing is just focusing on these boxes, trying to make these boxes perfectly square. And that's literally it. And that's all I'm doing here. I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm just using my fid to kind of push these around. And then we'll start counting here in a little bit and seeing how many we have on each side of the middle strand. Right now, I'm just focusing on boxes. If I just focus on boxes and I get everything the same shape, just about, then I shouldn't have any issues with where things are coming out on either side of the nose button, the center of the nose button anyways. There's no, I mean, like I said, I started on one, like the ones that were coming down from the right to the left, but as I keep moving, I just start pushing everything around to kind of make stuff make sense. Flip it over, and like all my boxes on this side are a lot smaller than they are on this side, so I know I basically need to move strings around and push them to the other side and kind of straighten everything up once they get moved over there to kind of even my boxes up some more. And that typically happens to me, and I don't know if anybody else out there that's watching has any suggestions on how to get that from happening. But what I find is on the back side, because I focus on everything on the top, and everything around the back has really big squares and everything up here has fairly small squares. So if anybody has a remedy for that or a better way to do it, I'd appreciate y'all telling me. This is kind of like I said in the beginning, very tedious and takes a lot of time to kind of go back through and move these squares around whenever they get off kilter so bad. So if y'all are willing to share your information, I'd appreciate it. But until then, I'll just keep on doing it the way I'm doing it right now. And typically ends up fine. Like my buttons and everything have been going fairly well for me recently, so it's not a bad process, it just takes a long time. And I'm not gonna to keep you all around this entire time. I don't think it's totally necessary to show you how I'm moving every single box around. Once I get to the point where I'm fairly satisfied with my boxes being about the same size, then we'll come back and I'll show you how I kind of look down the braid down this way and make sure everything is lining up and centered fairly well. But for now, we're not going to focus on that. So we'll come back after I've moved my boxes around enough. Okay, so what I'm doing here now is I'm looking down this, and it's kind of hard because there's a swell in it, so you kind of have to ignore the swell, but I'm looking down this, and you might have to get back here to be able to see it, to look down this, but there's a row of V's that you're basically creating with these boxes, and you want them to be as perfectly straight as you can get them before you ever start doing your interweaves. And so on this, they're not perfectly straight, but I'm probably going to start doing my interweave here in just a minute. And after we start messing with our interweave, it should allow us to get a little bit further in the process. And then once we get a little further in the process, I think we'll be able to kind of manage this and sorry, give me just 1 second. Get a little bit further, and then once we get one of these started, like one of the interweaves started, you can still move your boxes around once you've got your first set of doubles created. So it's not like starting here right now is going to be detrimental to the final product. It's just you want to get these as straight as you can before you start doing your interweave. So really spend a lot of time right here on this part of the nose button and getting all these straightened out and everything, because it will make a difference. You know, once again, you know, it's kind of, it might not feel like it's totally necessary, but it'll make your end product look really nice if all this stuff is well taken care of in the very beginning. So don't skimp, you know, just take your time, move your strings around. And what I do whenever I'm looking down this, I'm not really kind of narrating what I'm doing there, but I'll try now. So what I'm doing is I'm looking straight down here and I'm seeing where it starts to curve off. So I know that it starts curving off right around here. And so as it curves off that way, I know I either need to pull these strands down or I need to move the other strands to the right. And if it's a real sharp curve, you probably need to do both. And so like that one's a pretty sharp curve, so I'm just going to spend some time moving these boxes around up here. And if one of them is really sharp, you know, like if you've got a real bad curve, it's probably all the way around. It's probably not just like one bite needs to be moved. So take your time, kind of see where those are. They need to be moved this way. So just sit here and jack with this as much as you need to, and it'll all make sense once you start interweaving it. You'll realize that you can't spend enough time here, really. All the time that you spend in this area is well worth it. So take your time, do a good job right here, and it'll save you time in the long run, or it'll make you have a much nicer finished product for sure. Just keep looking. There we go. Now it's starting to straighten itself out. So I was really struggling with this for a while. I mean, we've had the camera off for probably 15 minutes, and I've just been sitting here jacking around with these V's trying to get everything straightened out. But it's looking much better now. It's getting a lot straighter. And the straighter it is, the better off we're going to be. It's really not straight in this spot. So I'm going to have to move these around quite a bit, and then I think I need to pull these sections down here. Don't be afraid of this. Just get in there and push these guys around as much as you need to. And if you find at any point that your strings need more moisture, then okay, add more moisture to them. Don't be afraid to take this thing and sack it back up if it needs it. It's looking okay. I may just decide to leave it as it is, and then we can come back and fix it once we start doing our interweaves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the creation of the first set of doubles. And so now I need to get my lacing needle and a pair of pliers and a smaller fid. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to focus on all the strings coming away from me. So going from the right to the left. And we're going to pull these out a little ways up past the end of our knot here. And actually, go ahead and pause it real quick. So you see the pause.
Go on.
Okay, so where I'm pulling this one out is you're going to have to follow the one beside it, like away from it, that is over. So I'm pulling this one out. The end of my foundation is about here, so I'm going to go one bite up, or one braid up, and then I'm just going to pull this entire thing out. Stick my lacing needle on here, and then we're going to run it. Let me make sure I've got it all oriented correctly. So like I said, you're going to go and follow that string that's coming above the one that you're jumping over. So I'm just going to, we're coming on the side closest to me. So pull that one down. And then I'm going to run it one more bite, or one more pass, I guess. I keep calling them bites, but it's really just a pass, I think. The bites are at the end. Okay. And what I'm trying not to do is I'm trying not to stick my hands all over this button, because I got all my V's straightened out and everything. Okay, so I just did that one. So now I'm going to just work my way around this button. So the next one, so I just followed this one down. So the next one coming out this direction is right here. And I need to pull it out right here. I'm kind of keeping my finger there to keep from pulling that V. But this is how you start your your double creation. And you just do this the entire way around. So I've got 8 strings, so I need to do this with all 8 of them. Or I've got 8 bytes, and this is going to be like a 32 string nose button essentially because of that. I think these strings have a little bit much moisture in them, but it's kind of okay because you're not really pulling down on them super hard right now. You're just kind of threading them through, so it's a little bit, I think it's okay to have a fair amount of moisture in them at this stage, just because you're not trying to really crank down on these, so you're not going to accidentally distort your strings like what you would do if you were really cranking down on them and pulling them hard. So don't be too concerned about that. You know, if they're a little wet, just keep working your way around, and as you're going, they'll eventually dry on you a little bit. Sorry, I'm just trying to fix some of those bites there. Okay, so next up in line is this one. So this one needs to come out right here. And let me see if I can find a better way of explaining where right here is. So on this next one, I'll kind of try to do a better job of explaining exactly where I'm threading these. It gets really frustrating sometimes, I guess, trying to manage all these strings, and this isn't even a lot. This is only 8, but how long these strings are and everything, it kind of gets a little bit frustrating because all these strings start getting in the way after a while. Okay, so next one. So the next one in line that is running away from me is this one. How do I know where to pull it out? So I've already followed this one down, so I need to follow this next one in line. So I'm looking at how this one comes this direction. I need to come down next to this, and I need to come down on this side of it, the side closest to me. So I need to pull it out right here, and then I'm going to trace it down beside that one. So my camera girl is extremely sleepy, so I'm probably going to call this right after I finish this part, and we'll have to pick this up tomorrow, which is fine. It's not going to hurt anything for it to sit in a bag overnight. Everything will just temper back up to about the same temper again. But she's out. She's been out for the entire day, basically. Apparently going to sleep at 9 p.m. really makes you real tired the next day. We usually go to bed about 10:30 or 11, and I seriously think going to bed that early makes you more tired the next day if you're not used to it. Too much sleep can be bad as well. Alright, so going back over here, so the next one in line is this one. This one needs one to follow it down, so it gets pulled out right here. And whenever I say I'm just following it down, I'm literally just doing the exact same thing that string does. So where it dives under, I go under, and where it goes over, I go over. So that's what it means by creating pairs. We're basically making pairs of strings that are doing the exact same things. So you'll notice, and you'll notice I thread twice before I take this off. And the reason for that is I think it just gets it a little bit further out of the way and makes it a little easier to deal with. So this is the next one in line right here. So comes out right there. And I'll show you what I mean whenever we're done with turning these back. So this one's going over this string and then under that one. So we're literally just going to go over that string and then under this one, just like this one does. And that's exactly what I mean by just following it down. It's a very, very, very straightforward process for creating these doubles. It took me a while to get to the point where I understood exactly what I was doing on these turnbacks like this. I was so frustrated. I just was having a heck of a time figuring out how to do this. But once you get it, it's pretty easy. And I don't mean that to sound condescending if you're having trouble with this. I also struggled with it really hard, but now for me, it's relatively easy, and I don't have to refer back to a video or a book or anything like that. You know, the more practice you get with it, the better you get, and that's just the way it works. This is my second to last one. I'm almost there. Then my camera lady can go to sleep. You'll see that I run my fingers down this, and that's just to make sure that this is straight before I thread it. If it's not straight, then you run into the issue of having to untwist all this multiple times, and your string after you twist it, it is very difficult to get that twist out. So you basically deal with it until you've threaded it under somewhere and you're done with it. So I try my very hardest not to let this rawhide twist up on me like that. Whenever you come up on a twisted spot, just take your time to take your time and untwist it. That way you don't end up with a problem. Okay, so now we're on our last one. So our last one is right here. So it comes out right there. And where did the needle go? There it is. And then you notice where we were at in the very beginning was kind of further away from the end of this right here, from the end of our foundation. And now you'll notice that we're right on the edge of our foundation here. And as these get sucked down, they'll pull it closer and closer to the edge of that foundation right there. And that's exactly what you want. You don't want a whole lot past it. You don't want too much past it. You definitely want to braid past it. But you don't want to braid so far past it that it's really cumbersome to kind of get that sucked down against the edge there. I'm trying to find which string has the needle on it. Well, I did a good job of looking at every other string besides this one. Okay, so now I turn this over, and I'm not going to make you sit here and film this, but I'm just going to explain what you do with each one of these strands. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to take one strand now, and you're just going to run it all the way down. So remember, you're following the string on the right of it. So like this one, for instance, it's going over, then under, and it's just over one, under one pattern the entire way. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this, and I'm just going to thread this one string all the way down to the very end, and I'm just going to run it out the very end of my button. And then after it's ran out the end of the button, we're going to leave it there until we do that with every single other one, and then we'll make turnbacks on the other end and start heading back this direction. But for now, we're going to leave it at that so that the camera lady can get some sleep. So now we've gotten to this part where I had tempered it up and I had moved all these bites around to where they're all really straight and even. We'll see if we can get this on the camera. So you're going to have to look straight down at, like, lower the camera angle. You're going to have to lower it down and look like right across it like this. So there you can kind of see where your V's are coming together. Anyways, what you do is you hold this out straight, and then you look down this, and all your V's should be in a perfectly straight line, and every set of V's should be like that. And I'm sure you can't really see it here. You can't move the camera. I'm trying to move it to a certain spot. You can't move the camera. So you're looking down this row of V's and basically trying to make sure they're all straight. And it's really tough to get here on the camera. But once they're all straight, then you can start doing this back braid. And so this is what we're going to talk about now, is how to start splitting your doubles, because this is another part that kind of gets people in a bind. So I'll just pick any one of these. And this is the one that I already have my lacing needle on, so I'm just going to go with this one. So I'm going to get all this other stuff out of the way so you can see. So this is the one that I have. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go behind the one that's to the right of it. And then I'm going to split this double right here. And so I'm going to go ahead and take my fid or my awl, and I'm going on the top side of this string right here. And I'm just going to pick up right there, because I'm going to go over, or I'm going to go under 2 now. So I start by splitting this first double and running it this way. And I usually run these away from me, but right now I think this is a little bit easier to see what I'm doing here. So I take that, and I'm not going to cinch it down real tight just yet, but like I did in the very beginning, I'm going to run this under, I'm going to run it twice. So then I'm going to go over 2 and under 2. And what you're doing here is all you're doing is splitting doubles. And so let me see if I can explain it better on this next one, like the whole double splitting and what that actually means. All right, so like I said, I'm not going to cinch that down super tight just yet. But so that one was over here. That one came from there. So I'm just going to move to the one to the right of it, just one over. And you do the same thing all the way around. It's going to get to the point where towards the end of this, like once I get to the 7th string, it actually becomes slightly different. But all right, so what I mean here by splitting pairs is you've got these 2 that are coming out together, and then these 2 that are going under this one together. And so as those are all doing the same thing, you don't want them to, so you come under here, you grab under those 2 with your fid, and that's going to be where you actually run your strand. So right there, I'm going to jump over one first, and then I'm going to go under these 2, just like this. And then as you do that, you just keep running this string down all the way till the very other, or not till the other end. I'm sorry, excuse me. You don't go all the way to the other end because we're at the last stage here now. And so what you're going to end up doing is running it down to about the middle somewhere, and then you're going to bury it under 3. And we'll talk about that whenever we get there. But so now I'm going over 2 and then under 2. So once again, splitting pairs. And that's all you do with the rest of this pineapple button, which is what this nose button is just a long pineapple interweave. So all right, we're gonna shut the video camera off here, and I'll bring you back once I get to number 7, since it gets different there. Okay, so I'm on my 6th or 7th string. So like I said, you can do this with any number of strings. So if you had a 4-strand or a 6-strand, 8-strand, 12-strand, doesn't matter. Once you get to the last 2 strings, the way you have to kind of do this, it looks a little bit different, but it's fairly similar. So now that I'm on my second to last string, I come behind the one next to it, and then where I want to bury it, this one has already kind of gone and been buried itself, but it's still a double right here. It's kind of difficult to see, but that's a double. So just pick that string out, and then you're just going to pass it like normal, but it just doesn't look exactly the same. So I just kind of wanted to point that out on that second to last string. So we'll run this one under 2 and then over 2 again, and then the last one actually is a little bit different because you have to jump under something or over something that you normally don't have to worry about. Excuse me. All right. Now pop our releasing needle off and then put that on this last string. And all right. So now you've got to go over this one that it's coming out over already. But then this is where we're going to go in right here. There's our double. But in order to make this all look the same, you've got to go under this one first. And it's one of the turnbacks that you did already, but just run it underneath there, pull it all the way through. And that makes the end look the same as everything, like all the other strings. So now that we've got it there, you're going to go over 1, not over 2, just over 1. And then fish that out. And then you run it the same as you have all the other ones. So you're going to go over 1, then under 2, and then you'll start the under 2, over 2 pattern all the way down until you run into a string that comes from the other direction. And we'll talk just a second right now about how that whole thing works. So like I was saying before, I bury under 3, and I don't necessarily bury them all right in the same spot in the middle. Like if you were to just transition, or if you were just to have them all buried in the middle, once I get my hands freed up, I'll kind of talk about it and show you where I'm talking about. It can create like a little bump that can be visually unappealing, I guess, and as well as probably pretty uncomfortable for the horse too, so all right, now I've got those all pulled down. I'm just going to run this over here and kind of push these up as much against the edge of this button as I can. It'll be better once I get my bone and start rubbing it down. But okay, so talking about burying these, right? So you don't want to bury them like one here, one here, one here, one here, because it'll make a little bump all the way around the middle. So what I tend to do is I tend to pick one side. So like here, for instance, I'll bury them all on this aspect of the nose button, but I'll bury one over here, one right here, one right here, one right here, etc. And I just kind of space them out so that they're as evenly spaced as I can get them, but on the same side here. And then typically what I do is I bend away from that side. So I cut off all my ends and then I bend it to where that isn't bunching up on the bottom and creating any hard spots or like any lumps that are going to be on the horse's nose. So I bury them all on one side of the button, and then after I've buried them all there, I bend it to where those are all on the outside of the nose button at the end. So anyways, we just did this one side. That's what it looks like finished. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come down, and this side hasn't been done, so I'm going to do this side next, and then I'm just going to start running these down. And I don't think you need to see that. All it is just a over 2, under 2 pattern on the same path that it's going on. So if you're coming down on this side of this string right here, you're just going to be on this side of that string all the way down. And so you just follow the path that it has and just keep splitting your doubles, and you'll eventually get there. So thanks. Are you going?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm on the last string here, and all I'm doing is just feeding it up over 2, under 2, splitting my doubles like I have been this entire time. But you can see like right here where we just passed that under, it kind of wrinkles this little string up right there. And so what I'll do is I'll just come back through here with my fid, and I'll just kind of push it back into place and just smooth it down and make sure my V's are still straight. So it's real time consuming to do that, but I really do think it makes a big difference in the way your braid turns out to look. But what I'm going to talk about here, and I've done it on all the other strings so far, but I didn't feel the need to show you 16 other times, is you bury the ends, or at least I bury the ends under 3. And so where the ends come together, they'll both be buried under 3. And I try to pass it on the right side every time, so both strings are coming out to the right of each other basically. And I don't think this one has too much further to pass it until we get to the last string. But every single time you have this little wrinkle right there from where you run your fid. Just take the time and push that down, and then make sure your V's are straight, because you made a lot of effort to keep those V's straight whenever you are laying down your foundation, the over 1, under 1 foundation in the very beginning. So try your dang hardest not to mess that up. But this is a swelled nose button that I'm doing, and this isn't any different for a regular nose button that's just flat. None of these steps are any different. This will be the exact same step that you use on any other type of nose button. You can use this same pattern on a quirt handle. You can use it on numerous different things. Everything is fundamental, like this. There's not really a whole lot that changes about this stuff. Just maybe the shape of the foundation you're braiding it over. But we're just still going here, over 2, under 2. Nothing's changing yet. We're getting up to, I think, the spot where I stopped with the other string. And the other strings, I just stopped in what felt like a fairly even spaced spot. So you can see all of these strings. So one's here, one's here, one's here, another one's here, 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 and here, I think. And so they're all fairly evenly spaced throughout the nose button. And that's how you want it. You don't want them all bunched up together because it'll make a big bump. Okay, now here we're running into the other string here. So I just went over 2, under 2. Now this one, let me see if I can get these out of the way. So this one right here is already buried under 3. So it's this string right here. You can see 1, 2, 3. It's coming out. So what we do is we go in that same line, and you can see I've still got a double right here. It's kind of hard to see because all the soap, but this is 1 and then 2. So I'm going to go over 2, and then I'm going to bury it under 3. So just like that. Now I'm just going to take this, run it up underneath there, come out right here, and it'll kind of mess your V's up a little bit, but I'm about to show you what I do to kind of heal all this stuff up. So remember, don't forget your last string right there. Okay, so now we're just gonna cut that one off. So now all that's left is just all these tags. Now I've got a pair of cuticle trimmers, or like a small wire cutter would do really well. And then what we're going to do here, you can lock this in your vise, the actual body itself, or you can just kind of hold it in your legs or whatever, find a way to kind of grasp onto it. But I grab this tail with a pair of pliers. I'm going to pull, and as I pull fairly hard, and I'm going to try to cut it off as close to the braid, or as close to the nose button as I possibly can. So just like that. And what that does is that kind of helps it recess back under there. And if you kind of see right in here, it's sort of gone. So now what we'll do is we'll just heal this little spot up a little bit and just kind of make sure that our V's are all lined back up, kind of push those around where we need them to get our straight line here. And I think that's good. So now we just do that exact same process for every single one of these. I'm just going to work all of them on this side first, but you could just alternate back and forth. But once again, pull it out and kind of crank it towards you so you can get it as close to that nose button as you possibly can. And then just trim that off, and then that'll help it kind of suck back under there into the underneath the braid itself, and then just move those 2 braids that it was coming out between back in their normal spots, and it should look like that. So you can't even really see where they were at, and that's exactly what we're aiming for. And so we'll just do that with every single one of them, and then that'll be how we finish out this nose button. The nose button on this one, so it's really hard to see. I didn't leave a lot of gapping in. There is quite a fair amount of soap in between these, so it makes it look like there's less gap than there really is. But there's a fair amount of gapping here in the middle, and so what we'll do is we'll take another string that's probably colored. I think I'm going to add some color in the middle and on these nerve knots. But I'm going to cut those strings maybe 3/4 to 2/3 the width of what the nose button strings are right now. And we'll dye those probably with some coffee, and then we'll interweave those in this button. But that's it. That's all you have to do. And we'll pause the video for a minute, and I'm just going to finish cutting all these off, and then we'll come back and show you how I kind of finish this up as far as rubbing it down. Okay, so now we've got all the ends trimmed off and everything. So now what I do is I take this, it's just a piece of antler here. I've got kind of a little bit of a spoon in it right here, a little divot. That's to kind of go over these buttons and stuff, but I've got a convex side of it as well. I kind of flattened the side of it out to get against these edges and stuff like that. So now what I do is I just take it and I just start on one side and I just rub the ever-loving crap out of this thing. I do this while it's still got some moisture in it. So this nose button has been soaked for about half the day, and it's absorbed all that moisture from the soap. So I'm just going to take this, and once I get kind of in this area, I flip it around and use that convex edge of it, and I can even use this smaller edge down here and just kind of rub all this down as good as you possibly can get it. And then once I get past that part, I just kind of hold it in my hand and just kind of rotate it around and just work my way down it slowly. And what we're doing here is we're seating all these braids because we want this to be as absolutely smooth as it can possibly be whenever it finally goes onto a horse. So take your time, and the finished work is really what's going to make this extremely nice for its intended purpose. You know, all this stuff that we're doing up till now, like all the straight lines and all that stuff, are really nice as far as aesthetic goes, but this actually matters. You know, this is going to make a difference to the horse. And so I'll sit here and I'll just rub this down in any number of different ways. You know, I'll just rub it like this for a while. I'll go back to what I was doing a minute ago with kind of rotating it around, and the whole deal is just trying to take off any bit of sharp edge that you possibly can that could irritate a horse whenever you're riding them in this. Yeah, it looks real nice too whenever it's all rubbed down and everything real nice. So we'll flip this around. We'll go back to this end and start working our way around this nerve button over here. And this will probably get rubbed down one more time because we do still need to add a little bit of color on this one, or some interweaves to fill in these gaps. So this isn't the end, but I'm trying to work on my finish work and get it really nice. And so I'm not afraid of sitting here rubbing this thing down multiple times if I need to really get a nice button. And there we go. So that's fairly nice so far. And if you look at it, so what I'll do is I'll kind of hold it up and I can look out across it and see as I rotate it if there's any spots that have any bumps, like over here. And I need to come back here and spend a little bit more time rubbing that section down real good. And then just rotate it around and kind of look at what you got, and that's it. It's not the straightest button in the world, but it's also pretty close. So that's a almost finished nose button. That's my first 8 strand that I've done. Thanks for coming along.